Wise words of wisdom for aspiring actors. I think it's just you've got to be true to yourself. I think that's the bottom line, is that you kind of know your truth. You know if you have a secret about something. That's always my touchstone, is if I can imagine many other people playing the part well, then I think I haven't unlocked the secret about it that means that I should be the one to play it. I feel I have to have an edge, I suppose, or something that, a connection that means that you can't ignore, or it's something alchemical almost. And I think it's kind of speak your mind too. I think you never regret calling someone on something. You never regret challenging a thought if it's what you feel. If you feel that something isn't on the page, it probably isn't. And and I've only learnt this in recent years. There are plenty of times when I've played parts and had a much more interesting character in my head than could ever be achieved on the screen, because it's in what the character does. Sometimes what they say, but usually what they do that leaves the sort of impact of that person on the movie and on the audience. And often I've developed a kind of complex set of contradictions and internal worlds for people, and realised when I see the finished film, no one's going to get any of that. So I think it's important to sort of defend what you think about things. Remember how to say water, because it makes it much easier than saying water and then people saying what. There are loads of cut-throughs. I'm a bit of a black cab driver in LA now, but I'm not going to give you all my secrets. You have to tip everybody, which is different. In Britain we don't tip everybody. I actually sought out the role of Marie Colvin in A Private War. I heard that they were making a film about Marie. I read a Vanity Fair article that was written about her. Maybe a year and a half after her tragic death in Syria, and the article just struck me with the commitment of this woman, the contradictions of her, the passion with which she pursued her career, the single-mindedness, but also this person who was so effervescently optimistic, I suppose, despite all the trauma that she witnessed. And I just thought, this is an extraordinary person, and if the right filmmaker comes on to direct the film, then it could be an extraordinary film. And when I heard that Matthew Heineman, whose background is in documentary, was going to be the filmmaker, I just really, really wanted to be involved, because I thought he's going to have an unflinching eye on this woman, and we're going to get all of her. And there's going to be a truth to the war zone depictions, which really matters. It can't be a Hollywoodization when you're dealing with subject matter like this. So I tried to meet him, and it took me about a year to actually meet him face to face. But luckily he was working on the script for that long, so the delay didn't matter. One of my heroes I ended up playing right after I played Marie Colvin, and that was Marie Curie. So I had this very extraordinary year where two very important Maries came into my hands at the same time. And that was, they definitely influenced one another in my mind, I think, because I was sort of thinking about them both in tandem sometimes. And Marie Curie was just an astonishing person. Again, someone who lived courageously. Marie Curie probably, I would say, lived pretty fearlessly. Marie Colvin, I don't think was fearless. That's often the cliche about the war correspondent, is that they're fearless. I think she was not fearless at all. I think she had tremendous fear, but the need to tell the story was so urgent that she went past her fear.
What was that like for you in terms of bringing Marie Curie to life? Did you have any context or anything to draw from in the first instance?
No, I think when you start delving into the life of Marie Curie, you think, my goodness, she's impacted all of our lives. And yet we have very little idea who she is. Yeah. All of the things that have sort of both energized the modern world and terrified it, from radiotherapy for cancer treatment to the atomic bomb, you know, those sort of polarized scientific, I wouldn't say wonders, but, you know, dramas, I suppose, stem from the work of Marie Curie. And I think it was just a joy to dive into her life and to find what a formidable, you know, uncompromising, brilliant, funny, passionate woman this was, you know, and, you know, she does deserve treatment in film because it's this sort of incredible story of scientific pursuit, love, and ultimately death, and all intertwined around the same subject, which is radioactivity. And I think, you know, the film is called Radioactive, not Marie Curie. It is a biography of radioactivity, and that is what I think makes it cool, and it stood apart amongst other scripts. I was reading, funny enough, I was reading another script and considering playing another female scientist. And then this script came along and just eclipsed that because of the kind of mad postmodern dance it took us through, you know, science, love, Paris, modernity, all of it really.
And for any English actor, I would say spend your money on a dialect coach and master an American accent, because it's more and more useful. And for me, I think the dedication that I put into becoming fluent, I would say, in American, you know, means that I can be as free as I can in English when I'm speaking American, but only now. And no one gave me that advice at the beginning of my career, and I was held back by it, I think, because there was a time when, you know, I could master the accent, but I wasn't free to inhabit it, you know? And there's two different things. And now, you know, I can be as deft as I can in English with an English accent. So that's my strongest piece of advice, I think.
I think I might have read this or heard this kind of, that you came across some photographs of Marie Curie, and that really kind of gave you an insight into who she might have been as a person.
Yeah, well, you know, I'd just come from playing Mary Colvin in The Private War, and she was, you know, she's a much more recent figure, and so there's plenty of news footage where I could not only see what she looked like, but I could see how she spoke, how she moved. And then suddenly, I'm sorry, it seems to be something buzzing, which I thought I turned off. I do apologise. So I felt a bit at sea at first, because I thought, well, where do I go? On one level, it's liberating, but, you know, you feel that the clue to this person must be in there. So I started to sort of pore over these still images and will them to come to life. And one thing you can see as you look at all of them is that she's always, if she is standing still, she's got this sort of expression of impatience on her face, like she'd really rather not be stopping for this business of having her photograph taken. And I thought it started to amuse me, because it started to crop up again and again in all these photos. You could imagine the sort of poor photographer, you know, faced with this formidable woman who was really sort of far too busy and didn't really give him the time of day. But it gave me a clue as to sort of how to keep her in motion and keep her driving forwards. And whatever was on her mind, she was always sort of several steps ahead. And, you know, it's true in those famous photographs of the things like the Solvay conference in Norway, where all the preeminent scientists of the day are assembled and they're all waiting rather pompously for their photograph. And Marie is not only, she's the only woman, but she's also the only one who's not stopping to pose. She's sort of chatting to this poor guy on her right, who's kind of conflicted as to sort of whether he poses for his sort of big moment or whether he's polite to this scientist on his left. So you should have a look at that photo. It is quite funny. But again, you know, to Marjan's point, it's true. You know, you can, if I had one idea about how to play Marie, and then whoever I was playing opposite as Pierre had a different idea of that relationship, I would have had to have changed the way I played Marie. You can't create a character in isolation. So the way my instinct of how to play Marie is dependent on Sam's Pierre understanding and finding that Marie charming and appealing. And, you know, if he had not really warmed to that version, I would have had to have changed the version, because the most important thing is he warms to her. So I would have had to have modified if that hadn't really, you know, held any charm for him.
The myths. Well, one, I suppose, is that girls take longer in hair and makeup than the boys. I don't think that's true at all. Two is that it's glamorous. Any of my friends who come and visit me on set say almost universally, "Wow, this really is not glamorous, is it?" You know, when they sit around with people eating lunch out of a cardboard box and not getting to go to the bathroom for 6 hours. I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. I think that the only tip for auditioning is to go in there and be prepared to play. I think it's be prepared to, you know, have your take and be strong with your take, but then be prepared to be malleable, you know. And I think that's the fun. I mean, most of the time people are wanting to know if you can be directed and if you can be free. And you know, I think you can surprise people. It's about really how relaxed you can be with the role. I know that's a sort of hard thing to, you know, it's a hard thing to do because the whole very nature of auditioning means that you often feel very nervous and, you know, feel you don't look right. But I think if you can kind of, that's one thing, you can get what you look like out of the picture, because that's other people's business, basically. I've learned that in later life. What you look like is not your responsibility. That is the responsibility of another department. So your responsibility is to bring truth to the character. So I think especially girls, you know, who probably go into an audition and you know, spend too long before they go out doing their hair and makeup, and actually they'd be better placed just kind of, I don't know, walking through a park and feeling free and making sure the lines are kind of in their body. You know, directors are sensitive people. Directors want to see what's in your soul, not what's here.
Our next award is for original screenplay, and here to present it are two stars who went out together in an education, and between them have worked with both James Bond and Captain America. Now there's a team-up I'd like to see. Please welcome to the stage the very talented and lovely Rosamund Pike and the very lovely and talented Dominic Cooper.
We were just discussing if Dominic actually is in Captain America, but he tells me he is, so I'll go with it. The true creator of the original... I think the autocue's wrong.
Here, look, I've got this.
Oh, well, we can go with that then. No, the true creator behind all film is the writer of the original screenplay. I mean, we're actors, we're interpreters. Alongside the original screenwriter, everybody really is an interpreter. A great screenplay captures dialogue as it's caught in the air. It instills drama in the everyday, doesn't it, Dominic?
It does. I completely agree with that. Couldn't agree more, in fact. And a great screenplay, for us as actors, offers truth, inspiration, first-class flights, lovely holidays, sexy women, lots of other things. Yeah. Interrupt me.
All those things. Yeah, so really, of course, the really original story would be if I read out the wrong name. But I won't do that. The BAFTA goes to... Oh!
The nominees are...
Can I get off the stage?
I've embarrassed him now.
That's the fastest I've moved for years.
Do you want to hear who the nominees are for Best Original Screenplay?
It's gone well. Amazing.
I'm going to pass it over to Dominic, who will tell you that the BAFTA goes to...
The King's Speech.
It's kind of so refreshing to see a woman allowed to be a woman in all different senses of the word, and kind of, but still kind of retain individuality at the same time. Was this kind of, I know obviously you've been fortunate to kind of have some really great roles where you've been given scope to do that before as well, but what was it particularly about this script and that character that you felt kind of could push that, maybe even those boundaries even a bit further?
Actually thinking about this before we did this Q&A tonight, and I thought, I was thinking about actors and how they go about playing roles. And I was thinking, I could have opted for a way of playing her that served me, Rosamund, better. I could have chosen to be very likable and be very warm and lovely, and I could have served myself. Do you know what I mean? It's good. I could have chosen to give a performance, obviously with sort of Marjan's blessing, which she wouldn't have given, let me add. But if I'd wanted to, use Marie Curie as a vehicle for myself. Do you see what I mean? I could have taken her genius and just made her a sort of easily likable, everybody get behind Marie Curie. What a wonderful, easy, fantastic woman. I want her to be my best friend. Well, I could have done that, but it wouldn't have interested me at all, because I think she wouldn't have been Marie Curie. She might have been the woman you'd fall in love with, or your next door neighbor, or the mum at the school gates you want to be like. I don't know, but she wouldn't be Marie Curie. And so I chose the more difficult route, which is, can I make someone who's as forthright, as obstinate, as stubborn, as sometimes rude, as passionate as I believe her to be, and get away with leading this movie? It's an interesting conundrum. I believe yes, because I follow people like that. And for a start, we've always seen men in these roles who, because they're a genius, they're given endless rope to behave as badly as they want, to be as womanizing as they want, to drink, to mess around, to be appalling, to let people down, and they're always given endless slack because they're a genius. And I don't think the same kind of slack has ever been afforded a woman. And Marie Curie doesn't do any of that. Well, she was obviously, scandal followed her later in life, and it was sort of, very surprising, really, seeing as, she got all the flack for that affair she had with Langevin, much more than he did, and he was the married man. And plus, she'd been the kind of complete toast of the town, and then just because she'd been embraced completely by French culture, French society, and then France was on the brink of war. Suddenly, a foreigner who was potentially breaking up the nuclear French family was all of a sudden a threat. And once again, she was the outsider, the foreigner, the person who was bringing down the status quo. So she was met with double standards her whole life. And I think, to her credit, she didn't let it bother her. And she'd made that decision not to let it bother her way before the thing came that could hurt her. She had said it wasn't going to bother her when they were covering her and showering her with accolades. And I believe in this industry too. It's the only thing you can do, is you say, I'm just, I'm going to tread my path. I'm going to be true to myself. I'm not going to be swayed by the accolades, because one day they'll be met with, what will follow will be the same people trying to bring you down. So I think she trod a very resolute path, but that makes you less instantly, cuddly, sort of easy to know, easy to like, I suppose. Yeah. But I found it fun, and she's a woman I would have deeply respected for all those things. So
things that helped me. When I started out, there was a book called Improv, which I found very inspiring, because I think it just makes you think freely and makes you. I found it as a kind of. It's not something necessarily I've gone back to. There was also a book that David Mamet wrote called True or False, which was a great resource and sort of, it sort of backs up one's instincts. And now I really love talking to actors about acting. I really crave that connection with other actors, and sometimes actors are quite shy to really discuss it, because there's some part of it, the process, that feels that almost, I feel this, that somehow if you analyze it too much, it might disappear. That if you try and touch it, it'll evaporate. But I've had a really good time recently. There's a photographer in America called Sam Jones who does a series of podcasts and video chats called Off Camera. And I've really, really enjoyed seeing and listening to those, because if unlike most interviews that you get, which are edited and somehow curtailed and often, steered towards an actor talking about their particular movie that they're in right now, it's a sort of hour-long meandering through someone's career, aspirations, what acting means to them, and often he kind of gets people into a comfortable enough space that you really get something that feels real and truthful, and for me that's just gold, and it's really kind of exciting when you hear things that, you know, experiences that you can share and you can identify with, and you think, yes, that's exactly what it's like, or oh, I felt like that too, or whatever. You know, it's actors showing their vulnerabilities and sharing those vulnerabilities, and often it's candid and unusual.
But that's the thing, you know, that time frames change, but human passions and desires and pursuits, they remain pretty much the same. And I think when you're doing a period movie, if you put the time frame first, so you're playing the period, not playing the emotion, then you've sort of missed a step, really.
Yeah.
You know, Paul Webster and I met when he produced Pride and Prejudice, and you know, I always feel so proud of our film because, you know, that was a version of Austen that prioritized, you know, Austen for me is all about, you know, young women having huge feelings for the first time that remain universal, and she documents so perfectly what it feels like to experience these big things for the first time, and our film, I think, you know, prioritized that and over sort of the dresses. I mean, the details were all perfect, but we were playing the feelings and left it to everybody else to sort of set the scene beautifully. And I think the same about Marie and Pierre, you know, that there are certain things that from experience, you know, Sam and I have probably both done period films before, and there are certain mechanics, like when you're in a dress, which I've learned years ago, and, you know, it just becomes second nature that you have to kick these big skirts out of the way. You have to move around them, and you kick, and then you move. But that's sort of second nature now, because I've, you know, had to deal with big dresses on stage, but all those things you do have to learn, and you have to feel that they're clothes, not costumes. And you rely, as you say, on a costume designer for that. I think, you know, when that scene, you know, I'm thinking of the scene where I sort of finally dusted off the lab after Pierre had died and she didn't touch it for a while. I thought, well, is this any different from any woman doing any cleaning ever? You know, she's just doing what you do. She's wiping down the surfaces and swilling out the bottles and getting rid of the shit like anybody would now. So, and I think, you know, maybe science has changed, and I think both of us were quite surprised at how much manual labor was involved with science at that time. You know, the physical grinding of vast quantities of raw substance. You know, they got this pitch blend delivered by the ton and set to work bashing it down into a form that they could use. I mean, it was a lot of sweat and tears went into that.
You know, you inhabit someone. Your job as an actor is to trick your brain into believing you are the person. You know, and if you trick your brain well enough, your body starts to respond as if you are that person. You know, so situations that are not dangerous because you're an actor and it's a movie are read by your body as dangerous, and your heart will race, you'll sweat, you'll have a physiological reaction that's not of your making, you know, and that those experiences in the body never leave you, I think.